Kenya has one of the best militaries in Africa. That is not hype. That is not patriotism. That is reality. And the moment you accept that, this war stops being predictable. Because this is not a story about a weak country trying to survive a giant. This is a story about two serious powers with very different ways of fighting, and one of them being constantly underestimated. If Kenya and Ethiopia go to war in 2026, the outcome will not be decided by who has more soldiers on day one. It will be decided by who adapts faster when the war stops going according to plan. And it will stop going according to plan. Let's get straight to it. Ethiopia enters this war with size, more troops, more armored vehicles, more artillery, more experience moving large formations. Ethiopia is built to push forward and keep pushing. Kenya enters this war with something different. Professionalism, coordination, joint operations, air, land, and sea forces that actually train to fight together. That difference matters more than people realize, because wars are not won by how much power you have, they are won by how well you use it. The war does not begin with a dramatic invasion. It begins with pressure, troops reposition, aircraft redeploy, borders heat up, and Kenya is immediately tested. This is the first moment where most people expect Kenya to make a mistake, to rush, to overreact, to try to show strength. Kenya does none of that. Instead, Kenya secures the foundations of the war. Air bases are hardened, ports are locked down, command centers are protected, supply systems are synchronized. Kenya is not preparing for a battle. Kenya is preparing for a long sequence of decisions. That alone tells you this military thinks differently. Ethiopia moves next. Large formations push toward pressure points. The objective is obvious: force Kenya to commit, expose units, and create a decisive engagement early. This is where Ethiopia expects its size to matter. But Kenya refuses to give Ethiopia what it wants. No reckless counterattack, no mass troop movements, no dramatic forward charge. Kenya absorbs the pressure and limits engagement. This frustrates Ethiopia, because Ethiopia's advantage depends on momentum, and momentum needs cooperation from the enemy. Kenya does not cooperate. Now something important happens. The war starts becoming complex. Ethiopia's forces are moving, but moving large forces is expensive. Every battalion requires fuel. Every convoy requires protection. Every route creates vulnerability. Kenya's forces, by contrast, operate closer to controlled hubs. Logistics are tighter, repairs are faster, communication is cleaner. This is not about Ethiopia running out of supplies. That's nonsense. This is about efficiency, and efficiency decides wars long before collapse does. Now the air war takes shape. Ethiopia has more aircraft. Kenya knows this. Kenya does not challenge Ethiopia for air dominance. That would be foolish. Instead, Kenya focuses on air survivability. Aircraft are dispersed, runways are reinforced, defenses complicate Ethiopian planning. Ethiopian strikes still land, but they don't end the war. They don't knock Kenya out. And that's a problem, because when air power fails to deliver early results, wars drag into uncomfortable territory. Now the ground fighting intensifies, not in massive battles, but in controlled engagements. Kenyan units fight deliberately. They don't chase retreating forces. They don't overextend. They don't turn tactical success into strategic exposure. This is where Kenya's military reputation shows its value. These are not poorly trained troops reacting emotionally. These are units executing doctrine. Ethiopia feels the difference, because Ethiopia must keep pressure high. A large army cannot afford pauses. It cannot afford stagnation. It must keep moving, or risk losing initiative. So Ethiopia escalates. More troops, more visibility, more noise, and now the war spills into daily life. Markets react, trade slows, transport costs rise. This is where wars stop being theoretical. Kenya feels the pressure, but it holds. Kenya's economy is diversified, it has maritime access, it has redundancy. Ethiopia feels pressure differently. As a landlocked country, Ethiopia relies heavily on stable corridors. Disruptions don't collapse the system, but they increase sensitivity. Costs rise faster, planning becomes harder, public scrutiny increases. This does not decide the war, but it changes the conversation, because now the war is not just military, it is political. Ethiopia needs results, not survival, results. Territory gained, opposition broken, a clear sense of progress. Kenya needs something else, functionality. As long as Kenya's state functions, as long as its military remains disciplined and its society holds, Kenya is not losing. That asymmetry is dangerous, because it means Ethiopia is racing against expectations. Now Ethiopia shifts strategy. Indirect pressure ramps up. Diplomatic moves, narrative campaigns, regional signaling. The goal is to isolate Kenya and make it look destabilizing. Kenya responds with restraint. No inflammatory statements, no reckless escalation, consistent messaging. This matters more than people think, because in modern conflicts, perception shapes intervention, and Kenya looks controlled. Ethiopia looks escalatory. Now the war enters the phase most analysts ignore. Stalemate. No dramatic collapse, no decisive breakthrough, just cost, month after month. This is the phase large militaries fear, because size does not solve stalemate. Every additional month drains resources. Every escalation invites scrutiny. Every loss raises questions. Kenya does not panic. Kenya does not rush to end the war. Kenya understands something critical. Time is no longer Ethiopia's ally. Now the internal pressure begins. Not collapse, not chaos, questions. Why is this taking so long? What is the end state? What is the cost? Kenya does not face these questions in the same way, because Kenya never promised dominance. Kenya promised defense, and it is delivering. Now the air and ground coordination becomes Kenya's quiet advantage. Kenyan forces begin rotating more efficiently. Units rest, refit, and return. Command remains clear. Ethiopian forces, larger and more spread, feel fatigue more unevenly. Nothing breaks, but strain appears. Now Ethiopia tries one more push, a calculated escalation, a show of force designed to force Kenya into error. This is the most dangerous moment of the war, because this is where discipline matters most. Kenya absorbs it. No collapse, no panic, no chain reaction. And that moment changes everything, because it proves something Ethiopia was hoping was not true. Kenya cannot be rushed into defeat. Once that realization sets in, the war's direction becomes clear. The war does not end with a parade. It ends with adjustment. Operations slow. Statements soften. Language shifts. Talks begin quietly. Not because anyone surrendered, but because escalation no longer promises reward. Kenya emerges intact. Its military still functions. Its command remains disciplined. Its economy survives. Ethiopia remains powerful, but without the decisive outcome it needed. So, who wins? If winning means conquest, no one does. If winning means proving resilience, Kenya does. Because Kenya entered this war facing assumptions of inferiority and shattered them. This is the final truth. Kenya does not win by overpowering Ethiopia. Kenya wins by being exactly what it already is. One of the most professional militaries in Africa, a force that values coordination over chaos, a state that understands modern warfare is about control, not spectacle. So can Kenya win a military war against Ethiopia in 2026? Yes. Not quickly, not easily, not without cost, but realistically, by fighting smart, by staying disciplined, by refusing to collapse. And that is why this war would never be as one-sided as most people think.